everyone, and welcome to a Living Testimony podcast with your host, Kerrigan Buck. Thank you so much for being here, and clap for you for being intentional with your health, with your well-being, with your faith, and with your spirituality. God is so proud. I just want you to know that. So today, I felt it was very important for me as a host of this podcast to kind of elaborate a little bit on who I am as a person, as a child of God, kind of what my very own testimony is, because the name of the podcast came from me realizing how much of a testimony I am and the fact that I'm still here because of the glory of God and His grace. So I just want to share my own personal story. Now, this will be kind of chopped up into 3 different sections, because when you think about a testimony, you got to think about what it was before God that you were doing, what you had going on, your wilderness that God leads you to in order to kind of figure out what you need healing from, to figure out what is breaking you down, what has you what has a stronghold on your life, right? And then the after, which is kind of living the life that God has made for us to live. And it's such a beautiful thing to get to. And it's just a great revelation that there is another side of it. So, sis, I want you to know that it's okay. You will get through it. Bro, I want you to know you're going to get through it. Whatever you're going through, it's okay. And I just really want to share my story. And it's really because I want to be obedient to God as much as possible. And the scripture I'm going to read today comes from 2 Timothy chapter 1 verse 8. And it says, "So do not be ashamed of the testimony about our Lord or of me, his prisoner. Rather, join with me in suffering for the gospel by the power of God." And they say that because you may go through things, but everything that you have to go through, everything you have to overcome, everything you have to endure is for somebody else's deliverance. And my hope and my prayer for you who's listening is that when you hear my personal story, that you know that you're not the only one out there that's been through anything that's been just heartbreaking, that's been just deteriorating to your soul. It's okay. If I got through it, you can get through it. And God has all of our backs, so no worries. So today, I really would like to start, a little brief in my childhood, because it's good to have a backstory to everything to come, just so you know exactly where I'm coming from and why certain actions I took and certain things that I did took place. That makes sense. So, and I have notes just to make sure that I stay on track, because y'all, I'm 28, and 28 years of life is a lot of living, right? So just keep that in mind and stay with me. So I grew up in Holly Springs, Mississippi, and I was a politician's child. So, I was used to smiling and waving and, being all in the spotlight basically, and kind of having to show up even when I didn't want to, right? And it's good to note that, because I kind of been doing that just about my entire life, is, kind of showing up and smiling and waving, but when I get home, it's a whole nother situation. But growing up, like I said, I was a politician's child. I had 2 older brothers, my mom and my dad, and we lived in Holly Springs, and I was the youngest. I was the baby. So, I didn't really know a lot of what was going on in my household. I was kind of naive to a lot of things because I was the youngest, and I think my parents and my older brothers kept certain things from me when I was like a child. And so there was a lot of unhealthy situations that we were put in, but I didn't realize it. And we went to church most Sundays, with my mom. She always took us usually. But some Sundays we did not, which happens. And, we kind of were in the Word, but like me and my brothers, I didn't feel like we were just, knowing who God was, what He was about, any of that stuff. We just kind of showed up. And oftentimes, all we heard was a lot of gossip in the church, right? And that's kind of what we grew up knowing as church and what church represented when we were younger. And then in 2006, we had to move to Tupelo. My parents officially split. Granted, they were divorced years before, but I didn't know. Like I said, I was kept from it. And we moved to Tupelo, Mississippi, with my mom. And it was all of us in this house with 1 bathroom. And it was roach infested, y'all. Ugh, I still get the jitters. It was roach infested. It was falling apart. It was in not so good part of Tupelo, Mississippi. And it was just a lot of cultural change for me and my brothers. I'm sure they were fine because, they were boys and tough and whatnot. But me, it was rough, y'all. And from there, I didn't have many friends that to really go by. I just kind of stayed to myself unless it was like during a sports season. I had friends within that sport, but that's really about it. And primarily that was volleyball. And earlier on, when we moved to Tupelo, we were able to be around more of our family, which most of them were there, and more of our kinfolk, if you will. And at that age, I was very prematurely, at the age of 12, introduced to pornography. I was introduced to, sexual immorality. I wasn't involved in it, but, certain family members showed me videos and showed me things that, my young mind really couldn't process. I really didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what it was about. I just knew it made me feel funny, and I just knew that it didn't feel right as well. And then I kind of get into my teenage years, if you will, around 2009, and I was introduced to marijuana at age 14, and I only tried it because there was this guy that I thought was just cute, and I was crushing on him or whatever, and he was doing it, so I was like, why not? Why can't I do it? And I tried it, but I didn't necessarily, start doing it. I literally just tried it, and then I hated it, and then I just was away from it at that point. I wasn't with it. But then I started to kind of become a brat, teenage years. I'm starting to mature and starting to, smell my own stuff. And I started becoming rebellious in a way towards my mother in the household. And I started just, being very disrespectful to her. And I remember distinctly just being so pissed off at my mom and thinking she hated me and didn't love me. Like, simply because she wasn't the person to buy my first training bra. And I've held that against her for years up until like last year. I really did, and I had to do a lot of healing, but that's different. And to follow from that, my brothers both left the house, so I was by myself, just me and my mom. And obviously with all that in the house with me and her and us just button heads and me just being disrespectful and rebellious, my basically safe havens was when I had to go to work, because I got my first job at 14, or when I had sporting events to go to. And that's kind of what I just thought was safe to me. But going to those events and stuff like that, and then working at the restaurant that I was working at in Tupelo, I met really good people. Some people were very good, and I'm still best friends with one of the young ladies that I met at the restaurant that I was working at today. But also I met some people that weren't good for me, and I mean that in a way is that they drank and they smoked at a young age. Some became young teenage mothers, and they were involved in sexual relations with older men and all those things. And this keep in mind, my mom kept me sheltered a lot. Like, if it wasn't me going to sports or going to work or something or school, then she was like, you're in the house, and that is it. And that's really all I had to go by. So all these things were different to me. So I'm being introduced to all of these things at a super young age, to the point where I don't understand it. It just looks like it's popular or it's cool at the time. And I was still very confused. And all while dealing with all of this, my dad gets a new family. And I, as the baby, daddy's girl, his Princess K is what he calls me or called me. Like, I am hurt. I'm just like, wait. You're having a whole nother family, and you're getting another daughter, and I am like heartbroken, y'all, to the point where I just start rebelling even harder against my mom, against my dad. I stopped talking to him for a little bit. I just started feeling just pure hatred towards my family, and I really didn't know what else to do other than fall into a slight depression. But at that age, I didn't know what depression was. I didn't know what it felt like. I didn't know what it looked like. And that was the start of a very dark path for me at a very young age. So I graduate high school, and the first thing I do is run away to Illinois to go play volleyball, thankfully on a scholarship. But I go 9.5, 10 hours away to get away from my mom, who we did not get along. And I get up there and I meet one of my best friends to this day, my first ever roommate freshman year and my best teammate. I meet her, and we click instantly. We're laughing, we're giggling, we're having a good time, and we're playing volleyball, we're in shape, we think we're cute, all this good stuff. It really didn't hit me that, I was away from home until this group of basketball boys came into the picture. And I say that because, like I said, I was very sheltered. I didn't really get to the chance to be around boys like that. If my mom saw me around a boy, she was like, "No, Kerrigan, get in the car. We gotta go." Whatever the case may be. So this was my first real, oh my God, I'm around boys and I don't have my mom around. So it was very different. And I found myself starting to lust after some of these men, and I was very confused on how I was feeling internally, how I was just showcasing myself, how I was trying to get their attention all the time for no reason. Like, and honestly, they weren't even that cute, but like looking back at it, I'm just really trying to configure all of this in my mind. I'm like 17, I'm not even 18 yet because June babies, but I'm just like, why am I just lusting over these boys? Why am I losing who I am when they come around? I'm acting dumb. I'm not like producing words properly. Like I like, what is going on? And like I started getting like really, into being around them and all these things. And so come to find out, we go into college a little further, and I'm getting in good. Sports is going on, we're having games, we're having tournaments, we're winning, we're doing great and all this stuff. And then I start going to parties. I'd never been to like a party outside of like a third grade birthday party at this point in my life. I'm like, I'm 18 at this point, going to my first party. There's a lot of drinking, there's a lot of smoking, there's a lot of other drugs that are going on. There's like sex over there, there's this over there, there's a whole bunch going on. And like my little eyes are just like, it's like crazy. And so like I'm introduced to all of this stuff, and then I start partaking in smoking weed like more and more, just about every day. I start drinking just about every day. I start going to these parties and getting to the point where I'm almost blackout drunk and getting in cars with guys. But thank God for my roommates, y'all, because they wouldn't let me they wouldn't let me go with random guys. And I thank God for them, because God knows what would have happened. But they used to always, have to take me home, drag me home, do whatever, because they didn't want me to make dumb decisions. And like I said, I thank God that they were there. But yeah, so I started skipping classes because I was too hungover to go. I started, going to smoke instead of going to like stretch and conditioning. I started being late to practice. I started slacking in practice because I was like, I don't care, and I thought the only thing I needed was like a good blunt and a bottle of Tito's. Like, that's it. And it got so bad to where like I was like, oh my gosh, like I was in love with volleyball when I got here, and now I'm just like, I'm idolizing like a bottle and some trees, like, and it was so crazy to me that I came to that realization, yet I kept doing it. And I'm doing all this, and I'm working 2 jobs out there. I'm playing volleyball, and I'm just overwhelmed, and I don't even realize it, but my body does. And I got sick often. I've had migraines like so much and so often, but like my comfort was going back to what I was introduced in childhood. My comfort came in watching pornography and getting drunk and smoking weed and all of those things. And literally, I couldn't go to sleep unless I did one or the other. I couldn't have a good day unless I did one or the other. Yet, mind you, the whole time I was in Illinois, I didn't step into a church one time. I didn't have a Bible at all. I didn't open my app one time. I just did all of those things and just was a sinner, which we all are. But it was really detrimental to the path that was before me, and I just had no idea. So volleyball ended, and because of a coaching issue. And so I had to come back home. Well, I went to ICC for a little bit. I was a majorette, but y'all, I can't dance. I don't know how I made it, but I made it. But anyways, I was a majorette, and I met this guy there, and he was on the football team or whatever. And I was just like, oh my God, like, I'm a dancer. He played football. This is like a match. And like, obviously I was just so into this guy that like after one semester at ICC, I followed him to Arkansas State. And I was just so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, like this might be, but when we got there, he started becoming very, very controlling. He started becoming extremely verbally abusive. And the only thing that I thought would fix that or would help the situation was to just give him sex. And honestly, I thought that would, better my situation and make him nicer to me, because deep down, all I was looking for was just somebody to show me any type of affection, show me any type of love that I could get. And like, Sure, I looked for it in the wrong place, but I had to kind of dig deep into what brought me to this point where I am like putting myself so far in the dirt that I think that my body is the only thing that's going to make this man be nice to me. Like, it was very eye opening, but it gets worse, is the bad part. So at one point, I found myself literally crying myself to sleep just about every single night, laying next to this guy in my bed, in my apartment, mind you. And it got really hard mentally. It got very dark, very fast. And I just had enough of being talked to like I was the scum of the earth. And of the little bit of courage that I did have, what I did was I just left him. I broke up with him, and I moved back home. I was like, I can't do this. This is too much. And I moved back home, and when I got home, I had to make a decision. Like, Kerrigan, are you going to go to college and finish up your degree, or are you just gonna just not do anything? You have to make a decision. You have to do something productive in some shape, form, or fashion, because my mama wasn't gonna let me stay in the house for free or just stay there and not be productive or doing anything that would benefit me later. And so, going from that, I started back at Mississippi State University. It was great. And then from there, the first semester, I actually got sick. I was diagnosed with kidney failure at that point, and I had to stay in the hospital for a couple of weeks. But luckily, the hospital that I was at, one of my best friends, she worked there at the time, and we talked all the time. She checked on me when she could, and all that stuff. But what happened was, she encouraged me to download the Tinder app. And I had never been on a dating app before this, so it was very weird for me, but I did it anyway because I'm in a hospital, I'm bored, I'm single, I'm just like, why not? So I download the app and I meet this guy and we start messaging and talking, and fast forward to like a month, I'm out of the hospital, I'm a little bit better, and I move into my apartment in Starkville. And this guy, I invite him over. And granted, he's like 4.5 hours away. So obviously the intentions was for him to spend the night. And he came, he showed up, we like met up that night. He came to my house. He spent the night at my house, and, we had sex or whatever. And he left, and then we started talking, and then we started dating. And I was literally idolizing this man. Like, at a certain point in our relationship, I put him over everything and everyone, including myself, including my family. I was just obsessed with this man, and the way that I guess he made me feel at the time, which what I thought in my little naive mind was, how love should be displayed. And fast forward into our relationship, he eventually started abusing me mentally, physically, emotionally, and sexually as well. And I kind of just stayed and just let it happen for years. And I kept trying to make him want me. I kept trying to make him love me the way that I knew I should be loved, but I knew that I wasn't being loved. And one day I was awakened by him, holding my Apple Watch, opening a message that I sent to my POC with an emoji that he was pissed about, and he literally smacked me in my face, grabbed me by my hair, and just threw me down. He beat me that day, and in his parents' house, which is insane, but he beat me over an emoji sent, and after that, I still stayed. He put a gun out on me. I still stayed. He threatened to run me over with his car. I still stayed. And I'm really trying to figure out, why are you doing this to yourself, Kerrigan? Why are you doing this? And like, there was something in me that just really needed to feel like I was being loved, or needed to feel like I was actually cared about in some shape, form, or fashion, because I didn't think that I had that anywhere. And it wasn't until one night where I drove 4 hours, 4.5, to go see him. And when I got there, obviously I was exhausted and I just wanted to go to sleep. And he literally wouldn't let me go to sleep. And he was trying to force me to have sex with him at the time. And I was just fed up. I was just done. I said, I'm not doing it. I'm going home, whatever the case may be. And literally I left that night, and, he threw all my stuff down the stairs. I had to clean all that up and then load my car, and then I just left. And I didn't look back. And literally the whole drive, the whole 4.5 hour drive, I was able to call on one of my best friends, who's still one of my best friends, if not my best friend today. And she talked to me the entire time until I got back home. And it was mind blowing. Like, my heart was broken, but not for the reason of losing somebody that I loved, but because that I let myself stay in it so long. And after that, I was extremely depressed. So I'm falling into this depression from not even getting over the first initial depression, and it just gets worse. So I figured that, I'm going to blame myself. I'm going to fall into this depression. I'm going to be hurt. And I started drinking and smoking literally every day. My breakfast was a bottle of Andre and a blunt. And my dinner was half a pint maybe of Tito's and a blunt as well. And that was my day-to-day life. Even with kidney failure going on, I'm still doing all these things. I'm harming my temple for what I know now is my temple. And I was drunk all the time. I was high all the time, even going to and from work. One of my jobs, I was always, under the influence. I was driving under the influence. I was being reckless with my life intentionally. And, I got so down one night, like, I literally tried to just finish a whole fifth, I think, or a pint of Tito's. And with my medication that I was taking, that I had supposed to have been taking for my kidney issues. And it's like, I was just hoping that I didn't wake up, to be honest. And I woke up the next morning, I felt horrible. Obviously, my head was pounding, and I couldn't have been more upset that I was still able to wake up. I couldn't have been more upset, just because I was in a very dark place. And it hurt me to know that I was feeling that way, but it also hurt me to know that now I have to deal with this. I have to deal with this day that I'm given. I have to deal with the emotions that I'm feeling. I have to deal with everything that's gone wrong in my life up until this point. I have to deal with that. I have to deal with this heartbreak that I'm feeling. And it was very, very confusing for me at that time. And I got to this point where I was literally just about blackout drunk every night after that, and to this point where I had a party. And I had friends over, boys and girls, and I had gotten so messed up that night that, I went into my room to, go to sleep, lay down, and come to find out, one of the guys that I actually considered a friend, he raped me that night. And he took advantage of me fully, and I couldn't stop him physically. I knew what was going on, but I didn't know what to do, and I found myself just going to sleep after it had happened, and just, passing out, obviously from being totally intoxicated. And I wake up the next morning just feeling just shameful, guilty, and just a wave of just regret and negligence going on in my mind, in my heart, and in my soul. And I'm just confused. And I wake up and I look at my phone, and it's a text message from this guy apologizing for sexually assaulting me that night, literally apologizing for it. And I just break down. I'm just like, wait. And I broke down because how did I let something like this happen to me in my own home? And also, like, how did I even think that me getting that drunk, that high, that it physically intoxicated, how did I think that was going to end? But I couldn't blame myself for what he did, but I could blame myself for getting that drunk, for thinking drugs was going to be the end all be all for me. And it was a really, really rough time, but I continued drinking and getting high every single day after that still, y'all. And it's like, the Lord was trying to teach me lesson after lesson after lesson, but, hard-headed, didn't want to listen. And I continued drinking and getting high every single day. Even after I graduated college, it was still rough for me to shake it. And I was just trying to figure out what was going on. But things started to get a little bit better. I was, working every day. I was doing good. I was working in my field of engineering. I had graduated. I was making good money. And, I had started going to church every now and then. I might have opened my Bible twice or three times a year at this point. And I thought that, I was doing better. But the friends that I hung around at the time, they kind of were still stuck in our old ways from college, and they were still, drinking every day and smoking every day. And with me, used to have been a people pleaser. I wanted to do what my people were doing around me, so I could fit in, so I could, seem cool and, be under the influence with you guys, because why not? And doing that kind of kept me inconsistent with going to church, with, doing better and moving in my purpose as I should have been. But um, keep in mind though, I still really hadn't gone to church like that outside of like Christmas and maybe Mother's Day, if that. I wasn't talking to my parents at this time in my life. We weren't, cordial whatsoever. I wasn't really talking to my brothers, and it was just kind of like me out there by myself. And I got tired of, drinking and smoking constantly. And I started going back to school for my master's at this point, so I had something to focus on and something to do and keep me busy. And everything seemed to be going in the right direction. But then, I got into another relationship with this guy, and he drank, so, and I was drinking still at the time, but not as heavy. And I realized that, I got into this relationship and I started drinking more and more and more, and then I started smoking again more and more, and then started going to church less and less, and all this stuff, all the things. And I was once again like obsessed with this man, basically idolizing him. And come to find out, it was just because like I didn't have a lot going for myself. I wasn't doing anything, and I relied on a man and men to kind of get me to that point or what I needed to do. And like I was just thinking about my past and just thinking about what I had going on. And I was just like, I don't really need a relationship right now. I really don't need it. So like broke things off with him. And then I don't know, I spiraled tremendously. I was not going to church at all. I was, back, drinking every night, every day, smoking every night, every day. And y'all, it got to the point where like I was literally so I needed to feel this void and feel loved and feel wanted and feel like I was important, and I was, beautiful by somebody, that I got to the point where I was literally having sex with this man and he was paying me for it. And I was feeling some sort of fulfillment out of it. And like I thought it was something that I would be benefited by. I thought that, I was being loved and all that stuff, but that's not what it was. And like I I got so messed up one night with this man, and like he didn't take care of me, whatsoever. It was kind of like, oh, she's drunk, she's useless now. And I woke up that next day and I was just crying. I was hurt. I was just confused at what I had done. I didn't know what I had done, to be honest. And I was just like, I told myself, Kerrigan, you will never, ever be in this predicament ever again. I was fed up. I was tired. I was disgusted with myself, and I just felt no remorse for anything, and I was just numb. And so I go past a few years. Well, not a few years, sorry. I go past a little bit, a few months, and I start working at my current job, and I'm working there for months, whatever. And so I find myself getting into a relationship. And I get into a relationship with this guy, and like I literally am obsessed with this man once again, but for a different reason. This guy was different. He has like the biggest heart I've ever seen, and he's very caring, and he's very mature, and he's nice, and he didn't want sex from me, like none of that. And I felt valued, and I felt something that I'd never felt before. But my history is telling me that, Kerrigan, screw this up in some shape, form, or fashion. Mess it up. Don't let this be good. You have to mess it up in some shape, form, or fashion. And like I was verbally abusive to him. I was very disrespectful at times. I was rude to him and his family at times, and my own family. And I had gone back into drinking. I'd gone back into smoking. I just been lazy. I wasn't going to church, and I'm falling back into this depression once again, but I'm taking it out on him because I didn't know what else to do with it. I didn't know where else to put it. I didn't know where else to take it. And, you know, we start getting a little bit better. He moves in with me at this point, and then we start having premarital sex. We start drinking together and all these things, and I just feel a sense of just uneasiness in my heart at different points in times in this relationship. And like, I cried myself to sleep a lot, and I really never understood why. With this man laying next to me, I'm like, well, what else do I need? And I'm crying and I'm crying and I'm crying, and I'm just confused because I'm like, what's going on? Like, why am I crying? So I go to my doctor. I start taking sleeping pills. I start taking melatonin. I start mixing ZQL with vodka, trying to go to sleep. And I'm really trying to fill this void. I'm really trying to just get a good night's rest because I'm exhausted. I'm moody. I can't eat. I can't sleep. It's so much going on. And like, I'm constantly blaming him for it. I'm constantly not taking accountability, not being responsible for what I'm supposed to be responsible for. And it was just a lot weighing on me. But I got past some of those nights. I thought that I was doing better. Me and him, we started going to church every now and then. We started, drinking a little bit less, started smoking a little bit less. I did. He didn't smoke. But me, myself, and, I thought we were doing great. I thought we were happy. We were good. Um, and one morning, we got up and we went to Starbucks and got some coffee and some breakfast from one of our favorite spots, and came back, brought it back home, ate it, and I sat on the couch with my coffee, and I turned on a show, to watch on TV, and I was going to have a chill day, and I started getting some flutters in my chest, which I had been having palpitations for like maybe 6 months to a year now at this point. And I was like, oh, it'll go away in a second. Let me just sit back and breathe, as I always did. And it was definitely different. I went from, feeling little flutters in my chest to being very hard of breathing randomly. And so I got up and I put my hands on my head, like coaches used to tell you when you played sports. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, I can't. I was like, I'm having a hard time breathing. And then I got really, really hot all of a sudden, like to the point where I was sweating, like profusely sweating. And I got very sick. I got very nauseous. I started throwing up, like vividly throwing up really bad. I'm on the floor in my bathroom, and the guy I was dating at the time, he came in and he's like, are you okay? Blah blah blah. He held my hair and stuff like that. And I finally started to calm down a little bit. My heart's still beating. And at this point, I'm just like, oh my God. And so I'm like, just run a cold shower. I'm getting in the shower because I'm burning up. Literally, I'm burning up from the inside out. And my head is spinning. And I get in this cold shower and I'm thinking, okay, if I just sit in here for a second, I'm going to be fine. And I finally cool down a little bit. And I get out of the shower and I go lay on the bed. I've turned the ceiling fan on and my box fan and my air thingy. And I'm just like, okay, I just got to chill out. And I start like basically dry heaving a little bit, and all of a sudden, like, I'm having a very, very hard time breathing, and I'm feeling my heartbeat in my ears, and like my whole left side just locks down. I go very cold, yet still feverish, and I started coughing, and like when I was trying to continue to throw up if I had to, when I coughed, I saw blood, and I started seeing more and more blood as much as I coughed up. And then I was terrified. I couldn't breathe without coughing up blood. My head was spinning. I still couldn't feel my left side. I try to get the attention of the guy that I was dating at the time, and he comes running in. He calls 911, and then they get me, and as they're hooking me up to the oxygen tank and trying to, clear my way and all this stuff, in my mind, I'm like, I'm about to die. I'm literally about to die right now. Like today, March 10th, I'm about to die. And they take me to the hospital, and the hospital basically is like, hey, they come in, they put me on there like, hey, You are about to get airlifted. There's nothing that we can do for you here. We do not have the specialization to keep you alive here. And in my mind, I'm just like, oh my gosh, like I'm going to die right now. And then honestly, I'm thinking about my cat. I'm thinking about Foxy. I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't feed her this morning. Where is she? I was like, I haven't fulfilled everything that I wanted to do this year. I haven't gone to the beach, like, and it's crazy because I think back now and I'm just like, Kerrigan, you were worried about the wrong things. Because at that time, I wasn't with God. It was just so much. And, I'm having doctors tell me that, they're losing me, and that, they're having to do compressions and all this stuff on me. And it's very stressful and it's a lot going on. And in the midst of that, there was like just a sudden peace. There was a sudden peace as the helicopter was landing on the roof of this hospital that I had to get flown to. There was this sudden peace. For a second, I started to pray. I started to pray hard. And y'all, I don't remember the last time that I had prayed before this moment in my life. I just started to pray. I prayed my butt off, y'all, from the time the helicopter landed to the time I got back there. And I'm so grateful to have had my bonus mom. She came. She prayed over me. My aunt, she was there praying over me. My brother was there. He was there to support. I don't know if he prayed over me, but he was there. And just the love that I felt from having people there, and just my prayer myself, it made me feel better about the situation in totality. But I knew then that I needed to change. Something had to be different. And I realized that in that moment of me not knowing if I was going to see the next hour or not. And I hate that I waited that long, but I am grateful to God that He put this incident, this situation, this literally moment of bodily failure in my life, because if not, I would not have found Him. And as far as being before God goes, that's the gist of my story. And I'm still sitting here today. So I got out of that hospital eventually, out of the ICU, off oxygen tanks and all that stuff. And it's just amazing how good God is for keeping me here. And I don't care what my past says about me. Before God, I was a wretch. I was a sinner. And today, I'm still a sinner. All of us are. But I say that to say that I don't look like what I've been through. And my journey with God has been immaculate. And it's going to continue being immaculate. But my story doesn't have to be your story. My before God doesn't have to be your before God. Start now. Start praying today. Start going to church. Start talking to people who are in the Word themselves so you can gain their wisdom. Start being intentional with your faith and being intimate with God as well. Early. I made that mistake, and I'm here telling my story today and hoping and praying that you don't make the same mistakes that I did. So get in the Word, get to know God, because it's the best thing that I've ever done in my life. And He saved me for a reason, and He will save you for a reason. No matter what you've done, no matter what you haven't done, no matter what you've been through, no matter who you've hurt, it doesn't matter. Jesus died on the cross for our sins, for our salvation. But you have to make the first step in going to Him with it. So let's end in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for this day, Lord. I thank you for building in me the courage to share my story and my testimony for before being in your word and being with you, Lord. Lord, I pray and hope that this testimony touches the individuals that you've destined it to touch. Lord, I pray that my words touch the hearts and the souls of those individuals out there that are hurting, that are angry, that are sad, that are depressed, that are thinking about taking their lives, that are thinking about staying in that abusive relationship, that are thinking that they are the reason they were sexually abused. Lord, I pray that every individual watching this finds rejuvenation with your word, finds renewing through your word, so that they don't have to make the same mistakes. They don't have to stay in anything that is not of you. And Lord, I pray healing over every individual watching this video, no matter what they've been through, no matter what they've gone through, Lord. I pray that you touch them and you keep your hands on them and their families and their loved ones, Lord, during any season and any turmoil of their life. Lord, I thank you for bringing me out of the turmoil that I was in and bringing me into your loving arms. And I pray and hope the same for every individual that is watching this video today. In your name, Lord, we pray and we thank you tremendously. In your name I pray, amen. I thank each and every one of you for joining today. Stay tuned for part 2 for being in the wilderness with Jesus. And I hope you enjoyed. Have a good one.